You know, the more I delve into these games, the more frustrated I become. I mean, there's so much here for me to like. They got funny jokes, they got likable characters, and they always catch me off guard with how weird they can be, but... Man, why do I have to use my brain to see any of it? If you saw my video on Sam and Max Save the World, you'd know that point-and-click adventure games aren't exactly my thing. That isn't to say I'm against them existing. In fact, there are some I like, but those aren't the same level of what the hell am I supposed to do as something like Sam and Max. I get so frustrated with these games that I sometimes forget there is stuff I actually like about them. I come back around for sure, but man, I really wish I could tolerate actually playing them like longtime fans of this franchise. I already talked about why I have a hard time with these games in that video, but to keep it brief, Sam and Max are episodic adventure games that have you walk around solving puzzles. And when I say puzzles, I mean bullshit. They are some of the most obscure and nonsensical I've ever had to figure out. Now that alone I can understand because these games are all about throwing weird stuff at you, and it is possible to figure some of them out if you really think outside the box. Where the problems really come in though is that you mainly solve puzzles by collecting different items and figuring out how they can be used with whatever's around you. The thing is though, not everything around you is meant to be used with anything you have. At that point, you're just guessing what's a tool that'll progress the episode and what's just fluff for your two pro-tags to say something funny about. Now, I can only assume this sort of thing goes for most other point-and-click games, so I can't exactly blame Sam and Max for being this way. If anything, my problem with these games is just the fact that they're point-and-click games, which I guess isn't exactly a fair criticism, is it? I may not be into it, but that's just how these games have been since the beginning. They're not gonna start turning them into GTA-style shooting games just because that's what I like. I could complain all I want, but these games aren't changing for me anytime soon. So I might as well focus on what I actually do like about them. And as for Sam and Max Beyond Time and Space goes, it's all that wonderful weirdness of the last game, but done even better. It may be an episode shorter, but man, did they up their game writing it.
I didn't.
Now, you might remember me criticizing the first two episodes of Save the World for mostly being set in everyday locations, which, if you ask me, felt somewhat out of place considering how absurd these games are supposed to be. Well, I'm happy to say that isn't a problem here. Of course, each episode takes place in Sam and Max's neighborhood to some extent, but they all introduce weird locations alongside it that fit perfectly with the strangeness of this game. Santa's workshop, Easter Island, a disco inside a castle, a sombrero spaceship, and even an office building set in hell. I'm also happy to say that the plot of each episode doesn't skimp out on being as strange as possible. To give a brief rundown of each, Episode 1 has Santa shooting up the North Pole after a demon finds itself lurking around his workshop. Episode 2 has Sam and Max take a portal to Easter Island where they have to stop a giant volcano from destroying the people on it, those being talking moai heads, seahorse monkey men, and famous missing people turning up as babies. Episode 3 has a hipster vampire who turns Sam and Max into zombies after making him look like a loser in front of his undead legion. Episode 4 has Sam and Max travel through time trying to return Bosco to a normal state after a mishap in the past turned him into a human-cow hybrid. Episode 5 has Sam and Max take a subway train to hell where they have to free the souls of everyone who ever died during one of their cases from their own personal hell diorama. For the sake of time, I'm not going into too much detail with them, but I think you can understand the kind of stuff you're in for just from what I described. With that said though, it's not like any of that weirdness is just a gimmick so as not to have any sort of clever writing. Like we're being given one strange thing after another and we're just supposed to point and laugh. There is some genuine effort to implement it all in as clever a way as possible. Now this is the point where I start going into a bit more detail, so if you don't want any spoilers, skip here. To start off, I've noticed how these games have overarching narratives that are sort of just disguised as episodic adventures. Now, while Save the World did this fine with its whole mind control plot, I think I like how this game does it more because, outside of Sam and Max just wrapping up with whatever they're doing before moving on to the next thing, you don't even realize at first that these episodes have anything to do with each other. The first 3 episodes all pretty much have their own thing going on. In episode 1, you have to rid the North Pole of this gelatinous demon after accidentally unleashing it in a failed attempt to exorcise Santa, who wasn't even possessed to begin with. In episode 2, you have to stop an erupting volcano from destroying Easter Island, all the while baby Al Capone and the ghost of your pet fish stand in your way. In episode 3, you need to reunite Sam and Max's souls with their zombified bodies to stop the vampire lord Jurgen from taking over the world with his zombies. The only thing connecting these 3 episodes is this one running joke of mariachi singers appearing out of nowhere when someone says the word birthday.
That was weird.
It's a funny gag and all, but you don't really think about it too much once it's over. Then you get to episode 4, in which Sam and Max find Bosco turned into a cow on an alien spaceship. After using a time-traveling elevator to rewrite the past and return Bosco back to normal, we discover something very peculiar about who's flying the ship.
Crossing 98% complete.
Prepare to deliver on my mark.
What are you guys doing here?
We can explain everything.
Yeah, it turns out that what you thought was just a one-off joke in each episode turns out to be an alien abduction conspiracy in which these guys kidnap people at different points in time and sacrifice their souls so they can afford to sing birthday songs on the side. The hypnosis plot of the last game wishes it could be this unpredictable. I guess if I did have to criticize this element of the plot, it doesn't really come back in a meaningful way in episode 5. Near the end of that episode, we make a birthday cake for the soda poppers to trick them into blowing out a cursed candle. Oh, by the way, the soda poppers have been secretly evil since the ending of episode 1 in the last game, and you thought Hugh Bliss was playing the long con. Anyway, we try feeding them a cursed birthday cake, to which Sam says happy birthday, prompting the mariachi singers to show up. The problem I have is that by the time they show up, you've already solved the last puzzle of the game. It especially sucks since there was a puzzle in the last episode that actually involved getting one of them to appear, so they just feel kinda wasted here since we made the cake anyway. Honestly though, that's all I have to complain about with the writing here. Now while we're on the topic of the mariachis, you gotta love how they write in the time travel in this game. This isn't just your typical going back to see dinosaurs plot. You see events from both this game and the last cross over with each other, and you even make some funny discoveries about characters you've come to know when you travel back to their pasts. The most obvious example being that Bosco was a test tube baby implanted with the DNA of JFK. I mean, yeah, this sort of stuff is mostly in episode 4, but it's not exclusive. There's this one moment in episode 1 where Sam and Max have to send Santa's sleigh forward in time to free their future selves from a giant pit of lava. Skip ahead to episode 5 and Sam and Max get trapped in the exact same pit, meaning all they have to do is just wait for their past selves to send in the sleigh. I mean, at this point in the game, you kind of forget you even did that, so it's a really nice surprise to see it show up again. Now, with all this talk of going back to the past and whatnot, there are quite a few callbacks to Sam and Max Save the World in this game. And while there are definitely some that just exist for the sake of saying, hey, remember when that happened? The best ones are without a doubt when they tie into whatever problem Sam and Max are trying to solve. For example, one of the main objectives in episode 3 is making Jurgen look like a loser in front of his undead army. In the episode, we discover that he and the rest of his zombies are huge fans of Midtown Cowboys, the sitcom which Sam and Max starred in the last game. It's so popular, in fact, that whatever product gets promoted on the show is the next big thing Jurgen likes to stock up on for his disco. We return to the TV studio to shoot another episode of Midtown Cowboys, this time promoting a line of garlic-infused cigarettes. This causes Jurgen to get some for himself to try looking cool in front of his zombies, only for them to catch on that he's just being a tryhard who can't handle them. You know, it's funny. An element of what might be my least favorite episode of the last game somehow ended up making for such a clever callback that ties into something that Sam and Max need to do. Now, the reason I want to get across that the writing here is more clever than it may seem is because when I talked about the last game, I tried saying that while you can definitely look past the surface in a few areas, the writing was mostly focused on just throwing weird ideas at you. I don't think that's the case with Beyond Time and Space. Yes, this game is nonsense, but it is very cleverly, very carefully planned out nonsense. It isn't so much a case of weird ideas for the sake of weird ideas, but more so a way of catching the player off guard when there's legitimately well thought out writing. And don't get me wrong, I love these games for how strange they are alone. In fact, it's the main appeal for me. However, when comparing the strange factor here to that of the last game, I can't help but find it more impressive for how intricate it is. And I just think that made for a better overall experience. So, there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Sam and Max Beyond Time and Space. And I must say, this series I've decided to venture into is truly something else. It is a shame though, I can't really enjoy them as actual games. I think Sam and Max is something I'd much rather watch than actually play. I guess I could always just look at Let's Plays for when the Devil's Playhouse remaster eventually comes out, but I don't know. Part of me wants to see if I can finally get through it there. Right now though, what I'm really looking for is a version of these characters that I can just sit back and get lost in. Something that doesn't require me to figure anything out to enjoy all it has to offer. In fact, I think I found it. Wait a minute, why does Hugh Bliss still look like that? Anyway, we defeat Hugh Bliss by boiling him alive and Max drinks him to celebrate. And I'm telling you right now, if he doesn't come back as a jar of piss, I will be very angry. You know what? I take it all back. This game sucks.